Hello friends and welcome to the Freedom Factory. We're up to episode 6 here, so glad you could join us. I am your host Adam Nuttall. I'm joined in the studio by the show's producer Ace. So the show comes at the end of a rather divisive week of race baiting rhetoric from our political class, and that's something that has disgusted quite a few of us really. It has of course only hardened our resolve. So we've got a lot coming up in today's show. First, we're going to have just a quick note on the fluoride bill, which has its submissions closing this coming Friday. So really just wanted to give you guys a head up on that. Then we're going to have a quick look at a promo video for a new grassroots documentary series coming up in the next few weeks. That'll be really interesting. Then I'm going to begin a series looking at the 2020 elections here in New Zealand. So this first part is concentrating on the landscape that the election was conducted in. And this is important. There is some things that we need to clear up to be able to investigate this further. We all need to get on the same page with some of this stuff. So then a couple of street interviews from yesterday here in Christchurch, where we had the Free Hong Kong people demonstrating down at the Bridge of Remembrance. So it was great to have a chat to them. Then we have some of an interview that we attempted to have today with Steve Evans, the founder of Families for Justice, who have been doing some great work shining the light onto judicial misconduct and systemic abuse in New Zealand. So we had some technical difficulties, a bad connection there on that interview, so we've just pulled together some good parts of it for you, and we will have a larger interview with Steve in upcoming episodes. After that, we're going to bring you a very interesting interview with Brad Flutie, who we got on yesterday to discuss the SNAs in the wake of the rather large demonstration up north there. So there's lots to get through, so let's get started. So now I just want to have a wee look at this upcoming fluoride bill. So the timing of this came to my attention through a post from Sue Gray, which she has titled "Urgent Submissions Needed on Draconian Fluoride Bill. Submissions close next Friday." So I'll just read you one part from her submission here. The criteria is the benefit compared to the financial cost. There is no provision for assessment of health or other harm. This means the only consideration is the cost of poisoning us with this neurotoxic substance compared to the financial cost of not poisoning us. Look, there is lots of things wrong with this legislation. It's a very undemocratic change by central government, and they deserve some feedback on this. Submissions close next Friday, so that's before the next show, so I will make a submission on this myself. Now we're going to play you a little intro video for a grassroots documentary series that's coming up in the next few weeks, and we're quite excited about it, so check this out. So the 2020 election in New Zealand is something that desperately needs more in-depth coverage. Now, like a few of us, I have been looking into this for a while, and I've been a bit unsure on how to report on it. You see, the difficulty is that it gets complicated and some background is needed to understand the landscape. So this report is trying to do that, to give you guys some background into the landscape around the election. So even before the election, people were asking the Electoral Commission questions about the process of the election. And after the election, so many people sent OIAs and inquiries that the Commission actually engaged lawyers to respond. Now, many people sent OIAs, but I am going to quote from one of mine, really just for simplicity here. So this response I got from Christina Temmel, the Manager, Legal and Policy at the Electoral Commission. And to quote Christina here, "Votes are counted manually and the results are then written down on paper tallying forms. The results are then entered by electoral officials into our own in-house election management system, which is the main software used to assist the administration of the election. It generates the election results website at www.electionresults.gov.nz. We designed and tested managed its development, but the election management system was developed by a third party, a New Zealand company called Catalyst, after a public procurement process in 2014. The system is owned by the Commission." So she goes on further to say the Electoral Act 1993 provides for results to be challenged through recounts and petitions on certain grounds, but does not provide for auditing a sample of the votes. So in fact, the Electoral Act has no provision to audit the votes in New Zealand, which is pretty important. So to wrap up, we've got paper ballots, we've got manual counting, and it is added up onto paper tallies. They are then entered into the election management system, which is managed by the Commission, but it is built and administered by a New Zealand company called Catalyst.net. So who is Catalyst.net? So first we need to be clear that the company, Catalyst.net, there is a lot of companies out there called Catalyst and they have no connection, so you do need to be a bit careful about that. But let's just have a look at what Catalyst say about themselves. Since 1997, Catalyst has been dedicated to using the world's best open source software and tools. Our business is about expertly adapting open source technologies to precisely fit what people need. So let's just have a look at what they say about the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission, a long-term relationship. Since 2003, Catalyst has helped the Electoral Commission maintain one of the most accurate voter rolls in the world. The core election management system used by the Electoral Commission is built by Catalyst. This performs the MMP calculations and provides detailed voting data to all the major media organisations. We also host the Public Results website, which plays a crucial role on election night. The various businesses, processes supported by the system leading up to an election include planning and management of properties such as voting places and advanced voting places, personal resource management including timesheeting and payroll, project task control, expenditure management and inventory management. So they also run a company called Catalyst Cloud, which is a New Zealand data storage company that provides cloud data storage in New Zealand. So the electoral roll is on those cloud data servers. So what else is on the cloud data servers? Well, PaperKite, the COVID tracing app, migrated onto the Catalyst Cloud and engaged a Catalyst management system. So let's have a wee look now at what else Catalyst is involved with. So the Dam Safety Intelligence Dam Monitoring System by Meridian Energy, the University of Canterbury Quake Studies, Encounter Solutions Wireless Sensor Networks for Remote Landscapes, the University of Canterbury Student First Enrolment Process, Next Generation Critical Communications for the Emergency Services, Website Library System for the Commerce Commission, Archive Central and Catalyst collaborate on upgrading shared database for North Island councils. So Archives Central operates both a physical storage facility in Fielding and an online database of metadata and digital records, including photos, maps and plans, on behalf of a consortium of councils in the North Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand, known as Manawatu Wanganui Local Authority Shared Services Limited. So that's, I imagine, where the SNA data would end up. The New Zealand Red Cross and Department of Internal Affairs and Catalyst worked on the Foreign National Resources portal. The Taranaki Regional Council, Predator Free Taranaki, Tourism New Zealand, the Tourism Business Database, Otaurahanga District Council Property Valuation Information Database, the Ministry of Social Development and National Emergency Management and the Department of Internal Affairs on their accessible financial help tool for the pandemic, the Office of Maori-Crown Relations online record of treaty settlement commitments, the Wairua District Council Geospatial Platform, the Christchurch City Libraries Digital Heritage Collection, the New Zealand Transport Agency Security Assurance Process, the College of Nurses Nursing Portfolio Site, Family Planning Training Management System, the Ministry of Education Study It System, the Department of Internal Affairs Life Event Portal, the Department of Internal Affairs Platform for Staff Training, 100% Pure New Zealand Specialist Program for Training Travel Sellers, the Grow ACC Portal for Staff Training, the Kopaki Tiaki Horua Healthcare Portfolio, Ministry of Education to create a curriculum progress tool, the Ministry of Justice Training Platform, the Land Transport Agency Geospatial Crash Analysis System, Department of Internal Affairs End of Life Services, the Ministry of Education Half-Yearly Judgment about Students' Progress, the New Zealand Post website, the Department of Internal Affairs Smart Start for expectant and new parents, the New Zealand Racing Board, the TAB, Spark and Spotify's premium streaming service, support services to the Prime Minister Cabinet and the Governor General. So we designed and built Cabinet, a secure online system for managing papers through the Cabinet and Cabinet Committee decision-making process. The accompanying app, Cab Docs, allows ministers to view papers on their mobile devices. We have Maori Television New Zealand's website. We have the Taranaki Regional Council website. We have New Zealand Customs Service Training website. We have the Ministry for Primary Industries Learning Management System, that's MPI's staff training. We have the GNS Science Training for Effective Collaboration. We have Humanitarian Leadership Academy Learning Management System. The LMAX Exchange, which is an electronic trading on foreign exchange markets. The county's Manukau District Health Board Learning Management System. LINZ, Crown-owned land estates that are surplus to requirements. So these are estates that iwi have the first right of refusal on these. The New Zealand Police, connecting staff anytime, anywhere. The Otago Daily Times online edition. Now this is just the New Zealand projects that Catalyst have on their own website. So let us have a look at this in real terms to try and get an idea of this. Expectant parents may have conversations with family planning staff who were trained on a system built by Catalyst. They then get information from the government, from the Department of Internal Affairs website built by Catalyst. The hospital birth, the nurses there were hired, a portfolio viewed on a Catalyst built website. The hospital staff training was managed on a Catalyst system. When the baby was born, the birth was recorded on a Catalyst system. When the family was in a car accident, the emergency services were called on a Catalyst system. The crash was analysed on a Catalyst system. When the child goes through school, their education is tracked on a Catalyst system. Their teachers are trained on a catalyst system. The information on the properties they live at is kept on a catalyst system. When they marry, it's recorded on a catalyst system. Their registration on the electoral roll is on a catalyst system. Their easy vote card is sent out on a catalyst system. The vote recorded on a catalyst system by a person who is trained on a catalyst system and paid by a catalyst system. Their death will be recorded on a catalyst system. So what is the risk with management systems that are open source, so the code's not hiding anything? Really, the risks are around the metadata and the use of this data to carry out traffic analysis and trends forecasting. You know, one rogue operator could access some of this data. You know, this kind of data that could be used to help rig an election. You know, when we have a company in this kind of pivotal position where we need to be assured that there is a strong culture of impartiality in the company. The one thing that would be concerning is any indication that the management were promoting a partisan political position. So let us have a look at a blog from the company's CEO. So this is from the 16th of May 2019, which was just a few months after the Christchurch shooting. And this is written by Don Christie, the CEO of Catalyst.net. It was first published as an op-ed for the New Zealand Herald, and it was in response to the first Christchurch coup. The Prime Minister is correct to maintain momentum in this area. Governments and social media platforms have put effort into thwarting the radicalisation efforts of Islamic terrorism, while at the same time ignoring the spectre in our own backyards of white supremacy and the rise of neo-Nazism. What has emerged from the summit is a good first step. Overall, our mission should be to reclaim the internet. When the internet was built, when we all worked on this platform, it was supposed to be an open and general force for good. We were going to promote knowledge sharing, create connections and unite humanity. And while we have definitely created connections, a lot of those connections have been to our detriment. We have let the internet slip from being a force for good into being something used to radicalise and torment people. We need to think about our defence mechanisms, how to build societal and national resilience. Our government needs to have a strategy about how it uses internet technologies and how to build safe, positive spaces for Kiwis to enjoy the best that the technology has to offer. We have the means of production. We don't need to seize anything. Google, Facebook and Amazon all used free and open source software to build their empires. New Zealand and New Zealanders can do the same. Build our own capabilities and systems that can interoperate with the rest of the world, while at the same time offer some protection to our fellow Kiwis from the harms that are associated with this medium. Our government needs to take the lead, and our citizens need to understand and support this. It is not up to the Prime Minister alone to shoulder this burden. There needs to be several politicians and industry leaders to pick this up and run with it. We need to fight mass conglomeration with mass organisation. While the Christchurch call is a great start, it is just one piece of a puzzle that we can solve here in New Zealand, then show to the world. The internet is ours for the taking, so let's take it back. So the company that manages the electoral roll, that administers the election management system and hosts the data, also has a CEO talking about shutting down internet freedom and censoring conservatives to make the internet a safe space. Safe for who? There is no voting machines, there's no Smartmatic, there's no Dominion. But there is early voting, giving time to build up polling data to know how many votes are needed to swing it. There is an easy vote card, making it, well, easy to vote. There is potential for access to the metadata in some of the systems to maximise any efforts to manipulate the election. There is no means of auditing the ballots once they have been stuffed into the box. And this potential threat to the integrity of our democracy is in an organisation headed by someone who is advocating the shutting down of free debate. Now, I know other people are working on reports on this election, and I'm looking forward to seeing them for sure. This report really is about trying to communicate the landscape that those elections took place in. Now, we will ourselves bring you more on the election in future episodes, and I believe we can make sense of this, and that with more understanding we can unravel this corruption, so keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, free Hong Kong, revolution of our times.
Sounds good to me.
Hey there. My name's Laurentium. So anyway, the identity of the mysterious jailer being unknown and somewhat a new figure in Warcraft LoW, is there a possibility that there could be a character we know is connected?
You got a question, mate?
Yeah. Free Hong Kong.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, sorry about that.
So now we'll just bring you a wee report from the Bridge of Remembrance yesterday, where we were lucky enough to find the Free Hong Kong democracy protests were out again. Now, we have huge support and admiration for these people, and I really feel like the New Zealand movement could learn a lot from them, and I just want you to look at how enthusiastically they wave the flags. There's some language barriers in talking to these people. This is, I think, the third time I've talked to them, but we both understand freedom, and that's really what's important. So, happy to bring you this wee report. Hey friends, so we're here today at the Bridge of Remembrance on Saturday, and we've got a little protest here in support of Hong Kong. So we're going to go and have a chat here. Okay guys, so now we're going to have a quick chat to Kay. So Kay here, a Hong Kong supporter. Hey Kay, how you doing?
Yep, we're doing good. We're going to protest for the human rights, including Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and the rest of the ethnic minority in China. Now they are suspect China CCP suspecting their human rights. The cultural distinction. No longer allowed to speak their mother language, including our Cantonese. Nowadays, our education system, they are seeking to prohibit we speak our mother language, Cantonese, and they try to erase our culture and our history between British UK, and what did they do for us, including the free education and against the corruption system. Nowadays, all the system are no longer functional. CCP use their powers and control all the expats in Hong Kong. So our independent corruption community now no longer functional to monitor the Hong Kong police. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow. So you're really talking about a broad sort of cultural attack where the Chinese aren't letting you speak your language, and they're in your education system, and they're wiping out the history with England, which is an interesting history and really brought the concept of democracy to Hong Kong, didn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And so nowadays we are trying to build up civilian airlines between Asian countries, Vietnam, Thailand, and Japan. We call the multi airlines. You know, why we call us multi airlines, because we have to share the same culture, which is multi, in our Asian cultures. And nowadays Thailand, Vietnam, they are infighting by the CCP in the economic aspect. Try to use the economic to invade all the Asian country, try to control their economic, just like New Zealand. You know, nowadays New Zealand have at least 30% export their goods to China. So China have the major power in order to control New Zealand economic. I hope New Zealand can back to Five Eyes enemies. Build up the strong relationship between UK, Canada, Australia, rather than the CCP, and help the ethnic minority in China, including Hong Kong, Xinjiang. Yep.
Wow, so you're really talking about a broad spectrum warfare, aren't you, with economic warfare and the CCP really just a broad spectrum attack, and lots of parallels to the activity that's happening in New Zealand, aren't there?
Yes, absolutely, I think so. So I hope New Zealand citizens, Kiwi, they can awareness to the CCP China economic invade and try to build up the relationship with the Western country again, build up the strong allies with Western culture instead of CCP.
Yeah, so that's really a call there for us to just, form stronger ties or reinforce our ties with, democratic countries in the Asia region, really, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for talking to us. It's really bold and just great to see you out here. So thanks very much and lots of love and respect.
Thank you. Have a good day, sir.
Yeah, well, there you go, guys. There's another perspective on it. So it's just brilliant to see these guys out here, eh? Brilliant. So here we are. This is an anonymous Hong Kong supporter. So welcome to the interview.
Hey, hello everyone.
So do you want to begin with just tell us a bit about why you're out here today?
Okay, no problem. 2 years ago, we have Hong Kong. We have extraditional law want to commence. So the Chinese government can be extradition some people back to China if they think they have something violate the law or something like that. Just what they want. In Hong Kong, we just have a peaceful protest in Hong Kong for just saying we don't want the extraditional law in Hong Kong.
And do you have any idea how many people have been extradited in the 2 years?
There's still no yet because the extraditional law is not commenced in Hong Kong because we have 1 million people in 2 years ago and 2 million people again to protest this stuff.
Yeah, so these are huge turnouts really, aren't they? 1 and 2 million people on the streets is really massive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very massive and it's very peaceful. And then, but the government seems not really like to listen our song and just want to move forward and continue to commence the extraditional law. They tried, but not successfully finally.
Yep, so you're here in Christchurch just making a show of it pretty much, aren't you? Have you guys got family back in Hong Kong?
Yeah, why we are doing the rally in Christchurch because we want the Kiwis know what's happening in Hong Kong and how Chinese Communist Party deal with Hong Kong and deal with the rest of the world. Yeah, the Chinese taking over since 1997, and the politician situation and the freedom of speech and is getting worse after the Chinese government taking over Hong Kong.
Yeah, and we see it sort of steadily getting worse, really, don't we? Like it's just in phases getting worse by degrees.
It's getting worse again, yeah, because last year, they have commenced the national security law that's totally taking over the freedom of speech from Hong Kong people.
Yeah. But you're still turning out, so you're still getting quite good turnouts on the street in Hong Kong despite the crackdown, is that correct?
You mean in Hong Kong, after the national security law, the Hong Kong people is not going to allow any rally, or any protest in Hong Kong anymore.
Okay, so you're not able to come out on the streets anymore in any decent numbers?
Yeah.
Okay, so how have you adapted to this in terms of protesting in Hong Kong?
If you want to protest in Hong Kong, you have to prepare. You have to get caught by the police and get into the jail.
Right, so it's really become quite a militant thing just to peacefully protest for freedom.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder, and more dangerous.
So do you see, in response to this, back in Hong Kong, do you see more sort of a cultural response, so more graffiti coming in, more messages painted on the wall, this kind of approach?
It's getting less in Hong Kong, as I see, because the national security law is too strong for the Hong Kong people. I think a lot of them are very scared about them.
Yeah, that makes sense really, doesn't it? But, you know, the fire of freedom, I'm sure, still burns down there, and that's why you guys are out here today, really. And I notice you're all covering your face. None of you are revealing your face here today.
Yeah, because we want to protect ourselves and our family in Hong Kong. So we have to protect ourselves to cover up my face, and yeah.
Yeah, these are very real concerns that people have for their safety and well-being. So I'd like to thank you very much for talking to us and just being bold enough to come out here and make a stand for freedom. So full support from the New Zealand Freedom Movement.
Yeah, I want to thank you all of the New Zealand people and Kiwis and to support the Hong Kong rally in Christchurch.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks very much from an anonymous Hong Kong supporter. So brilliant show there from them. Thanks very much. You take care, mate.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it, guys. There's the situation in Hong Kong being expressed on the streets of Christchurch. So, thanks for joining us. So now we're going to bring you an interview that we had today with Steve Evans. So Steve Evans is from Families for Justice. And in their own words, New Zealand families seeking justice. The current family court and SIFS systems are breaking our families apart and abusing our children. We need a change. So unfortunately, the connection for this interview kind of let us down, really. And so what we've done is we've edited out some good bits because they are really good bits. And it's a very interesting discussion. So we will be interviewing Steve again in the not too distant future, probably in the next few weeks, because there is actually quite a bit coming up with the Royal Commission into state care abuse that is starting up again tomorrow. So, look out for future interviews, but here's what we could get from today's discussion. So enjoy. Hello friends, and welcome to the interview. We are here today with Steve Evans from Families for Justice. So thanks very much for joining us on the interview, Steve. No.
It's my pleasure, mate.
Excellent. Yeah, good to have you. It's a bit of a poor quality connection, but we'll try and persist and see if this works. So maybe to begin with, you could just tell us a bit about Families for Justice.
Well, Families for Justice is a New Zealand group. It's part of an international group, and I'm only part of that group because I was a victim, and it was started by a whole bunch of victims. And when we started, we were generally trying to improve the family court. And then we discovered the lawless, corrupt buggers at Oranga Tamariki. And then we discovered that other ministries of the New Zealand Crown were also lawless, like parts of the New Zealand Police. And then we realised that in many cases it was an all-of-government approach. And so, you know, DHBs get involved in it. We've got cases where, you know, they haven't acted in the best interests of the children, let alone lawfully. And of course, we've had to battle the judiciary. So, you know, it's been an interesting exercise. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd be spokesman for a group like this, but I couldn't sit around and do nothing. And I was very determined to make sure this didn't happen to my children. So that's why I'm doing what I do. And we're spread all over New Zealand. We've got bigger. I mean, we've got so many victims, can't help but grow. But we've had to adopt different type of internet technology because the mainstream media wouldn't run a lot of our information, and, you know, the government's forcing a different kind of narrative. And so we just concentrated on telling the truth with evidence. I think we've done a pretty good job. Yeah. And by telling the truth, we're producing the evidence with it as well. And it's not fake news, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's what people are looking for, real things, you know.
So the Royal Commission on Sexual Abuse in State and Faith-Based Care is starts again on Monday.
Okay.
And I think the next 2 weeks should really wake up New Zealanders to the quality of taxpayer-funded employees that we've got abusing us. Yeah. And we're going to have to do something about it, because we're not going to be able to pass on much of a country by the time this is all over.
Yeah.
Shouldn't take 45 years to get justice, like the people in Lake Ellis, when, you know, prime ministers of the country knew, governor generals knew, everybody knew that children were being tortured on their genitals. Yeah. And it takes individual citizens who are perseverant and have standards to fight the bureaucracy that did every single thing possible to stop justice being served.
Yeah. So that starts again next week, because that's already had a session or two, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's Monday.
Yeah,
but,
classic.
You know, it goes on further, you know. I mean, how is it that 250,000 people have been sexually abused in state care? Social welfare, MSD, child, youth and family, Oranga Tamariki, out the bloody gate, mate.
Yeah, 250,000's a huge number, isn't it?
No, that's actually a conservative figure. Right. So I've been told by some of the judges. They say it's closer to 460,000.
Wow.
But at the present moment, they're saying 250,000. But, you know, I've interviewed some of these guys and girls that have been sexually abused in state care. Yeah. And, you know, some of them are in their 50s. I've interviewed Mongrel Mob members, Black Power, normal Joe Blows like you and me, bro. Yeah. And, you know, I grew up, I was sent to a children's home myself. Not that I want to go there. But, for sure. You know, it's just out the gate what happens. And the state is not a very good parent. And Tolly said that. And, of course, you know, you look at people like Oranga Tamariki. Well, you know, the Ombudsman said that they broke domestic and international law. Now, people have been saying this for years. And the judiciary has been supporting those ministries abuse us. So where's the judiciary in all this?
Yeah, well, that's the question, isn't it? Where is the judiciary in all of this? I mean, not just this issue, but across the board.
Well, clearly, they are not impartial, and they are supposed to be the interposer between the overwhelming power of the state and the fragile rights of an individual. But what's actually happening is they're supporting the state. Yeah. So you're not going to get justice, and we're going to have to deal to those judges and the judicial system
Yeah, that's right.
Otherwise, we're going to have, you know, a terrible situation where people can't get justice.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yep. Yeah, she's a messed up situation, really. And so there is heaps we've got to talk about, really, isn't there? You've had that billboard campaign up there. How did that sounds interesting, eh? So we've got to talk about that.
Well, sadly for the lady that did that petition, the petition got hacked.
Oh, right. Yeah, I did. I remember reading something. You post something about that, eh? So that'll be an interesting conversation.
Yes, 3,551 complaints to the Judicial Complaints Commissioner, and none of them upheld.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, that's the state of it, really, isn't it? What a complete mess.
Well, the judicial elite are protecting themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we've really got to hammer it home to them. And, you know, I mean, I never thought that I would be seen as an activist. But, you know, we are going to have to use Brooker versus New Zealand Police Supreme Court of Appeal, and we're going to have to start protesting outside these individuals' homes to protest as a group of dissatisfied New Zealanders, because that's the only thing we've got.
Yeah.
I can't find anything else apart from going to the UN, which, you know, just takes too long.
Yeah.
But my view is, if you're going to operate with criminal intent against the citizens, then the citizens are going to stand up against you.
Yeah. Well, that's the most fundamental law rights protections that we have, is the right to protest. You know, doesn't really get more basic than that, eh? Yeah, that's right. It really is getting outrageous, and a major call for justice from the victims is really what's going on here. So I think with the poor connection, the best thing to do is probably end the interview here for today. And thanks very much for joining us, Steve. And we're definitely going to get you back on the show to talk about this in more depth. So you take care of yourself, mate, and keep up the good work. Thanks heaps.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, brilliant, guys. So that was Steve Evans from Families for Justice, and we'll put some links in the description there for you guys to chase up on that. So she's interesting times here in New Zealand. Cheers, guys. So now we're going to bring you an interview that we had yesterday with Brad Flutie. So Brad runs a page called Outspoken with Brad Flutie on Facebook, and he gets quite a bit of attention on there sometimes. So in his own words, the page is writing and talking about current issues, philosophy, and proposing solutions to vexing problems with our society. So I spoke to Brad last night in the wake of the protests in Northland opposing the SNAs, and Brad has been doing quite a bit of work on the SNAs. So here is that interview for you now. All right, hello friends. So we are here today with Brad Flutie. Brad Flutie is the Northland candidate for social credit. He also runs a quite successful Facebook page, Outspoken. So hello Brad, welcome to the interview.
Kia ora, Adam. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks very much for joining us. So maybe to begin with, you could just tell people a bit about yourself and a bit about what you've been doing on your Facebook page, Outspoken.
Yeah, so I grew up as a country lad in Taranaki until I was about 9 years old, and then I moved to the big city in Auckland and grew up there up until my late 20s. Then I met my partner in Tauranga, and we sort of moved up into the Northland Forest, back to the rural areas. And moving back out to the rural areas was quite a shock to me. The neglect out here and the lack of concern for, you know, a lot of where our tangible value comes from, our resources, our farmers, the things that sort of keep our society going along. And what sort of got me into activism, politics, political issues, environmental issues. I mean, I was always an environmentalist, but was when the Department of Conservation decided they were going to drop $600,000 worth of poison over 12,717 hectares neighbouring where we live. And I decided that, well, I wasn't really consulted on that. Neither was my mother-in-law, who's the landowner. I wanted to find out more about this before I sort of agreed to this, and whether there was proper due process put in towards alternatives, because the quote that we read when we did a friend of mine did an Official Information Act request said it was around about $355,000, the quote to do it. And I think even at that point, I felt like that was excessive, considering it's not that rugged. There are a lot of trappers around here. There wasn't a lot of consultation with people that could trap this area. The main problem was possums. There weren't that many species that needed intense protection. And so we decided to go through the process. And while I was doing that, I looked into this 1080 issue and found out that what the media were saying to urban populations was not what the rural population was seeing and hearing and feeling, being adjacent to these sites. So that got me thrust into dealing with this issue. And then as I chased the branches of information that went off that issue, I found that there were actually quite a lot of issues to do with corruption and I guess just what would you say? I would say the misrepresentation of information in multiple different issues as it pertains to New Zealand society as a whole. I felt like there were people in politics and media who were telling a story that suited their perspective, but wasn't necessarily in line with facts and evidence. And that didn't sit well with me. And I wanted to at least attempt to bring an alternative view to the debate stage. Unfortunately, as you and I know, that there's not much of a debate stage. It's somebody has the monopoly on opinion in this country, and they hold it with quite a firm grasp. So we have a situation where our representatives believes that total truth can be held and not pursued. And that's not the way it is. That's certainly not the way it is. If we want to find out what the truth is, we have to have a debate stage and where we can, both people with different views can sit across from one another and pursue that truth together. And we have to figure out which people out there are the best at doing that from either side, so we can figure out what is true and what isn't true. Otherwise, we just have shit slinging and name calling, and that's all we have at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. It really is about the narrative, and pushing the narrative in this narrative war, I suppose you'd say, and just trying to get a bit of a discussion going about facts and evidence. So you got a bit of traction over the last few weeks discussing the SNA issue. So maybe you could just give us a bit of clarity around the SNA issue that you're finding up there in the far north.
Yeah, that was quite fortunate. I was quite lucky with that. I think I sort of did a live about SNAs at the right time, and a few people that didn't normally share those posts, those lives, started sharing them, and they started sharing them in mass. They started sharing it through Messenger. They were tagging people, and it just started taking off. And I think it's an issue that not just rural New Zealand need to take note of, but urban New Zealand as well. Look, from what I've found so far, significant natural areas are what most people are saying. They're calling it a land grab. If we wanted to get really accurate and really precise, we would call it a land authority grab. What that means is the government is going around and designating these areas as SNAs, even on private property and on Māori land. What it should be is what it's always been, private property or Māori land. That's it. There is nothing on our property that is anything other than private property or Māori land. Significant natural areas is a hypothetical environmental pursuit to let all of us know that these areas should be protected. We already know that. We're not the ones that are the problem. For example, up here in the far north, the significant natural areas over the last few decades have increased under our watch from 30% to 42%. So that alludes to the fact that we're not actually the problem. This is something that we're culturally sensitive to. We want to protect our environment, even if we don't get any help. Northland up here is known as the Forgotten Land. It's known as the Forgotten Land because until New Zealand first came along with Shane Jones, it didn't really get much in the way of funding. We still didn't really get that much. I think it went to mostly Shane Jones' friends, although I'd have to look into that in detail. But Northland doesn't get much support in protecting our land and increasing our primary production. We never have. Yet we still managed to protect our significant natural areas. The other big concern with this is that the reason why I say it's not really an environmental issue is because it's tied up with the Urban Development Act. And so what we can see through a particular insider through the Ministry of Justice who contacted me just after I did that viral live is that the national government and the Labour government for the last few decades have been trying to classify these areas as SNAs, in effect stealing news rights from private landowners and Māori. And what they're going to do is either offset the land that urban developers and land transport are going to destroy with their developments by locking away other people's use rights on their own land. The other thing that could potentially happen with this, and I don't see why they wouldn't do this because this is a good idea to get them out of the shithole of debt they've put themselves in with this lockdown fiasco bullshit, sorry, is that they could actually trade, make our use rights a commodity that the Crown owns and trade it to foreign companies or other urban development companies that are developing urban areas. Now that to me is blatant theft. That's use right theft. And in the 21st century, with a history of communism in terms of open theft, like what the Russians did to the kulaks, killing them and taking their land, it's not something that you can do these days. You can't do those historical, blatant, in-your-face examples. You have to be a little bit cleverer. The snake has to be cleverer than how it's been in the past. It has to find ways to do this very sneakily and through paperwork. And this is exactly what it is. It's a paperwork authority grab. So other companies and other entities that work with the council and work with the government can destroy the environment in areas for their goals, for their hypothetical economic goals, and telling us that because they're doing that, we can't develop our land, or we have to pay for all these ridiculous paperwork processes just to do something. Like, for example, if I want to go and use some of these significant natural areas to do some manuka honey, build some tracks through there, make it easier for me to hunt possums, hunt deer, or even do some things that are symbiotic with the land, I would have to engage with the council. Now, I don't need to engage with the council. I am an information sponge. I will go and search my butt off trying to find ways to do this that's environmentally sensitive because I care about that. I shouldn't have to go to the council, who doesn't know what I know, to pay for things so they can tell me what I can and can't do on my own land. That's not helping me. That's negatively reinforcing me. And that's not helpful. I need help. I don't need to have all these regulations, whether they're useful or not, or whether they do stop rat bags from destroying the environment or not. It doesn't matter. What I need is positive reinforcement in terms of developing my land in line with kaitiakitanga or symbiosis. That's just common sense. That's psychology. If you want people to do good things, positively reinforce that. This negative reinforcement government crap.
Yeah, or just stay out of it, of course, is the other option. They could simply leave you alone, you know.
Yeah.
So there has been quite a bit of opposition and awareness growing in the community about this, and you guys have had some public meetings that have been quite successful. And then just the other day, we saw this culminating in a really successful march on the Kaikoui council buildings up there, is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, so you were there for that march. Do you want to just tell us a bit about that day and how it was?
Yeah, well, I was quite taken aback by the numbers. Although, you know, I have to acknowledge the extent of influences many of the individuals there, the extent of influence that many of the influencers there have over the community. So the numbers was great, the feeling was great. I do have, and the march was good. It was good to see unity between farmers and Māori, Pākehā and Māori. You know, the division narrative that we've had going on in Aotearoa, New Zealand, has been so extensive from both sides. And trust me, I'm not going to pick on either one side. Both sides has been pretty bad at dividing themselves, both the radicals on both sides. But in particular, when we got to the council building, and this is where the positivity for the event for me sort of dropped a little bit, as I saw several of these individuals just promoting the wrong thing on the stage. Now, the councillors do have some responsibility to take, you know, that they really should have been one of the first to get up in arms about this. And it took the community to come up in arms before they started saying something. But I have friends that know many of those councillors on that board. Many of them don't support it. And it was paused and put on hold rather quickly because they listened to their constituents. Now, this isn't the same across the rest of the country. Hutt Valley didn't have this. Councillors tried to ignore their constituents. But when we got down there, we didn't respect that. We didn't respect that our councillors had our back. The mayor wasn't there. The mayor decided that this event wasn't worthy of him standing there alongside his councillors. He decided he was going to go and have an interview with Radio NZ. I didn't think that was good enough, but hey, we make up our priorities as we go along. But here they are standing up there, and some of these influencers are encouraging the crowd, whether they meant to or not, but that's exactly what was happening, to castrate these guys as if they're a shooting line of ducks up on the stage and it's all their fault. I've been very consistent in trying to make sure that the people who are angry and frustrated about these SNAs have their anger directed at the people who are the cause of it, which is central government. Whether we have central government loyalists in our local or regional government, that's something we have to figure out specifically for ourselves. Seems to me that the Far North District Council doesn't really have that many in relation to central government loyalists, but we do know that this has all been coming from central government for the last few decades, and the information is all there for anyone who wants to go and find out. So our frustration needs to be directed at where it's actually coming from. And if we stand there like a mob and don't allow people who have our back to speak, we're going to push those people to the government side because they don't feel safe with us. We have to make sure that we're being very precise on who's against us and who's with us. Because if we're not, we're going to push more people away from us. And what I saw at that hikoi is I saw individuals who have been influencing activists for years, influencing people to be mad at the wrong people. And I think it's really important that influencers do a responsible job of influencing. And there are many people within these circles in Māori that aren't doing that. And I've been watching them do it for ages in terms of locking down roads up here for COVID when you're not supposed to be, not doing their research to figure out, you know, whether this is a sham or whether this is just another government propaganda push to make sure that they still have people supporting them because they're not doing a good job of governing the country. You know, we need to be better than this, especially if you're going to put yourself up on a stage looking like a leader. Leaders don't lead people to do foolish things. Those are fools creating more versions of themselves. And I didn't like that. But all in all, the hikoi cemented the fact that we are united against SNAs. But if we're going to be successfully united against SNAs, we need to be successfully united against the real problem, because all of these problems, whether they be SNAs, whether they be foolish lockdowns, whether they be this pursuit of potential mandatory vaccinations, whether they be any issues, they are mostly all stemming from a single source, and that's a government trending towards tyranny.
Yeah, that's right. The government is trending towards tyranny. And I mean, I guess this is fair comment, really, in a movement that is quite young in many respects. And, it does take time to learn how to focus people and groups of people like this. So, real mixed emotions for me watching the Hekoi the other day. I guess the big one is pride that finally people are coming together and speaking up, and a group like that is definitely the overwhelming feeling. Also, I mean, I've grown up in really poor neighbourhoods, so I know just how many people there are in this country who don't have land to lose to an SNA. You know what I'm saying? So to me, it really seems like the beginning of a process where we're standing up for each other, rather than a conclusion of it. It's really just starting. So, yeah, interesting comment from you there on directing it and the need for responsibility. I mean, that's certainly fair call. Anything else you picked up from the day there?
No, that was a really good comment that you made just then. It is new. We are learning, and it is important not to be too hard on everybody who's still learning this. But we do need to make sure that, because this is the problem. One of the problems that we have when we're pointing out all these issues with government is everybody's always going to ask, what's the alternative? And if the alternative is people who can't help but divide themselves or constantly pick on the wrong people, or can't find it in themselves to pursue being better every single day, those people that are still sitting on the fence, they're just not gonna come to the realization easy enough. And so I think we're starting to move in the right direction. I think a lot of people are starting to be aware that the way this system is set up in this country isn't for the benefit of our citizens and the land. But I think what I'm trying to say is the next step is, well, what does that look like? And how do we come up with that? Because those people that we vote for, they're not doing it.
Yeah, well, I guess for me, really, we come up with the environment in which that's created in, rather than the actual solutions. And I guess what you're saying about the way we conduct ourselves is really that if the alternative we are offering appears to be mob rule, then people are not going to go for that. People don't want mob rule. It's chaos and it's dangerous, so they do, shy away from that consistently. History's pretty clear about that. So I guess a net result, it was very positive, I would say, looking at it from down here. I did feel a wee bit like the council was just going to pause it until you all went home, if you know what I mean. I mean, central government is just going to reposition and find another way to push it through. Is that the sort of feeling you had?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing that I keep making sure that I'm repeating to people, is that this is not over just because they've paused it. To jump up and cheer up and down, that the goal is from central government is to get these SNAs rolled out all around the country. We have idealists on the left who believe that it's for environmentalism, and we have these sneaky ones within the national area that are like, no, this is the best way to get our economic goals in line with the UN agenda done as fast as possible, so we can be being as efficient as possible at all costs. And that doesn't sit well with a country that is values-based. Our public is values-based. And if they have to go and hide these things or do them out in a way that's secretive and in small places in this council here, and then 2 years later, this council here, that they know it's unpopular with you. And just because they've paused this doesn't mean they're going to stop. They're going to find some more a different angle to get this across. And we need to stay vigilant. We need to say, no, this is not happening at all. Right? You want to improve our how we interact with the environment, You have to find solutions with open dialogue with us. So we're creating the solutions with you. Because if it doesn't fit with our values or our community or the things that we believe strongly in, individual rights closely intertwined with private property rights, it's not going to cross the line. And we need to, as long as the government keeps pursuing deception and angles for solutions without our consultation, without our submissions, we're never going to stop fighting. And if they want to find a way to make a better world for real, they have to work with us. Otherwise, it's not going to work at all.
That's right. They have to work with us. Yeah. And I guess you guys have you've won the skirmish there, but the battle continues is really the strategic situation, isn't it? So, yeah, thanks for... Yeah, that's right. It's only just started. Yeah. So thanks very much for joining us here today, Brad. That's been great to talk about that. Hope to get you back on the show some other time. It'd be really good. So thanks for your time, mate.
No, thank you, Adam. It's been awesome.
So that was the Freedom Factory, episode 6. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you like the show, then share it. You know, that really is the only way that we can escape the algorithm pen. And if you want to support the project and help us grow and bring you more freedom journalism, then you can donate on our website at frogmedia.myshit.nz. You can also find all of my interviews on my interview channel at bitchute.com/Adam Nuttall. Above all else, I want you to take care of yourselves and be kind to the people around you and speak your truth. That's the show. See you next week.
順從，仲要順從一班冇膽匪類，如此一個社會實在太多雷同，億萬個當中你只是一條精蟲，扮撚晒盡忠喺度發噏風，昨夜一條龍串中你會在夢中，沉默就被人當契弟，唔聲俾班小人攝晒上位，從一開始你個屎忽鬼，19班底加一藍天後歸，沉默就被人當契弟，唔聲俾班小人攝晒上位。19班底得一男子又歸，人人為我，我為人人，穩定社會背後照舊血淋淋，太多真相冇權過問被囚禁，正義聲音永遠為公義抗爭，非美無恥夾硬話人作反，就是剝繭無法平反，維權嘅道路點會平坦太野蠻，莫須有剝奪你自由，犧牲咗嘅生命永遠冇得翻轉頭，點着個火準備拆天。有得發泄，唔使隨便發癲。一日發現，原來一直被騙。沉默更突顯有人擾亂視線。所有人睇住佢上位，跟住佢作弊當所有人傻仔。自把自為，過晒火位，係乜嘢體制造就呢個邪惡班底？沉默就被人當契弟，唔聲俾班小人攝晒上位。從一開始你個屎忽鬼，19班底加一藍天後歸。就被人當契弟，唔聲俾班小人攝晒上位。從一開始治理屎忽鬼，個19班底得一男子又歸。 有一男子戴個頭盔，係咪要教導死人留位？冇晒常理，殺人墊底，恐怖染上血的身體。大話冚大話，想掩飾狐狸尾巴，搞赤化唔怕，呢啲叫文化誤差，本末倒置，不分青紅皂白，白色恐怖個白最邋遢，玩到咁轉點算有冇彎轉？俾人捉住痛腳，仲要死板兜圈，插到佢氣喘，要揾窿捐。邊個用錢送佢一程，我送花圈。沉默就被人當契弟，唔聲俾班小人攝晒上位。從一開始你個屎忽鬼，19班底加一男子頭盔。沉默就被人當契弟，唔聲俾班小人攝晒上位。從一開始知你屎忽鬼，個19班底得一男子入龜。沉默就被人當契弟。
We will not back down until all our demands are met.